Welcome to Season 2 of Feeding Families on the EcoParent Podcast Network. And don't forget to check out the new season of our other top podcast, Raising Kids Naturally. But before diving into this episode, a little shameless self-promotion from my son.
My dad started EcoParent when I was in the womb. Now it's pretty much the only parenting magazine still in print. If you like the podcast, you'll probably like the magazine too. You can subscribe online. You might also be interested in EcoParent's online courses, especially the kids nutrition and kids wellness courses. Stick around until the end of the episode and my dad will give you a discount code. Enjoy the show.
Are you looking for a hands-on, nature-based education that lets students experience their learning on multiple levels? For more than 45 years, Oak Meadow has been supporting families as a leader and pioneer in homeschooling and distance education, creating rewarding educational experiences that fit your family's unique needs and goals. Their secular, book-based curriculum can be used independently by homeschoolers or through enrollment in their teacher-supported distance learning school. Discover the high-quality, child-centered learning materials you need to give your student a happy, harmonious educational experience at oakmeadow.com.
The Feeding Families podcast is all about food and nutrition for kids. We bring you new ideas and inspiration for your kitchen and answers to your food questions to help you overcome the very real, very frustrating food-related challenges so many parents are trying to figure out. I'm your host, Jess Sherman, family wellness educator, author, practitioner of functional and holistic nutrition, and mother. I want you to develop unwavering confidence in the choices you make every day. So let's get into Feeding Families. Hey, welcome back, families. Excited for another amazing conversation. So to frame out this chat and the guests that I have with me, I want to just take us back to episode 1 of this season where we talked about nourishment and we talked about all of the different ways that we nourish our families and our kids and ourselves, and that it's not just about the food, but it is about the food. And gosh, we're on a podcast called Feeding Families, so we know that it's about the food. But what I really wanted to do this season was blow open the word nourishment so that we could understand that you don't always have to start with the food. There are lots of interconnected ways that we nourish our families. And I outlined 5 of them. So if you haven't gone and listened to episode 1, listen to that one. And this episode here, I wanted to talk about one of those aspects because one of the ways we nourish our kids is through food. One of the things, it's a core nourishment need. It is something that our bodies evolve to expect and need and want. It is the very first primal instinct that we have when we come out of our mothers is to find food, right? you put an infant on a newborn baby on a mom's belly, it's going to find the breast and it's going to start to nourish itself. And so it begs the question, what is up with picky eating and weird food behaviors? Like, what is this all about when our kids are denying their bodies that essential need? What's going on? And it throws us into a loop. It throws us for a loop as parents because we're like, I'm just trying to feed you and nourish you, and you're not accepting this. And so I wanted to have a conversation about picky eating and eating behavior in general. And to help me with that conversation, I have Elissa Arnheim here, who is a good friend and a wonderful practitioner who has been helping families for years, starting with her own really interesting journey with her son, but then moving into the idea of nourishment is constantly on your mind. We have had multiple conversations about nourishing mind, body, spirit, relationships. So I thought you would be the perfect person to help me with this conversation. So thank you for coming.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm honored. Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah, so it's going to be another sort of mom to mom conversation. We're both practitioners, but we're also both moms trying to raise families and trying to, do the best we can to nourish our kids, and faced with the same stumbling blocks and problems that every parent has, which is money and time and the cotton candy at the fair and the birthday parties and the big eating and all of that stuff, right? So we're gonna keep it real. But you have, in your professional practice also worked through, helping parents understand picky eating and eating behavior, belly problems. You've done a lot of work. Gosh, how many summits have you produced now on the microbiome and constipation? So interviewed a lot of people and
Including you. You've been so fabulous.
yeah, about belly pain. And you said in one of the things you wrote to me was that you understand that, working on, I think you picked out three things, which is calming inflammation, calming the nervous system, and supporting the microbiome is really the key to just about everything.
Absolutely. And if you were to map it out, like I'm a very visual person, and if like I were to draw that, there would be all of these other loops that connect and interconnect those because when you get outside in nature, you're supporting all three. When you get better sleep, you're supporting your gut microbiome and you're supporting your nervous system. So it's really wonderful how when once you kind of like lock in on a couple of things, you can see how there are opportunities all day, every day to do little things that support these three pillars. And it can be so easy. It doesn't have to be a fight. And that's like the biggest message I want people to be is just like pick the easy things. Do the easy things first, and everything else will get so much better.
Yeah, we have to invite more calm into our lives, right? And I do think it is an invitation because the default, we're going on a tangent here right off the bat, but it's an important tangent. I think the default is chaos, busy, too much, lots of things, tasks. That's the default right now in our life. And so if we don't consciously invite calm into our lives, it's just not going to happen. And when I first discovered this, someone actually said to me once, Jess, I think you're addicted to the struggle. I think you're addicted to the chaos. And I was like,
Oh, I was too.
you too? Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really subversive because when we become parents, we get on the treadmill and we're like, "Oh, I got to do the things. I got to wake up. I got to do the thing. I got to get everybody up. I got to get the new t-shirts. I got to get the food on the table." Like there's just so many things and it just becomes and then I got to go back to work and then I got it becomes the default. It just becomes the way our nervous systems adapt to life. And then all of a sudden we burn out and we fall down and we get sick.
Maybe I could do this a little differently.
Okay, let's come back to the picky eating because it actually does relate. I think you can probably see how this relates, but let's just let's come back to eating behavior with the kids. And I want to start off. I mean, I see everything through the lens of the nervous system. I think a lot of what you teach is also that. And when we understand the nervous system, we understand that our appetite changes, our taste changes, our response to food changes, our gut microbiome changes when we're stressed. And I'm starting to see eating behavior, like I don't want to say picky eating, but different eating behavior because there's overeating, there's undereating, there's texture problems, there's not wanting to eat even when you're hungry. What else do you see in terms of eating behaviors?
Oh, and just like not being able to stop. I mean, picky eating has so many faces. Belly aches, avoiding belly aches, not being able to stop when there's sugar around, and just so many different behaviors.
Avoiding certain foods, but not other foods, like having
Yeah, and sometimes you don't eat it, and sometimes you do. Baffling, right? But it's not. I mean, there's an underlying system to all of it, and like it's not the parents' fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. I mean, we live in such a crazy, super stressed out, go go go, busy, commercialized world, and the food world is bonkers right now.
it's bonkers. It is bonkers. And so between you and me and everybody listening here, we're starting our own little revolution. One of the things that I talked about in episode 1 of the season was how we do have the ability to create a culture of nourishment in our home. And that but no only if we pay attention and because everything else is going to come in if we don't set some strict boundaries around what we consider acceptable.
Yeah. And really, that's like that goes for all of parenting. And so if this is your approach to parenting, I'm speaking for you here too. We give you permission, put up that boundary with food so that you can have all the freedom inside and outside that boundary.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's the easiest time to do this is when you're pregnant, right? And so if any of you are pregnant, maybe with a second or third child, uh, the easiest time to sit down with your parenting partner if you have one and like talk about the culture that you want to create in your home and where is food going to fit in here? How are we going to talk about food? What is acceptable? What is not? Where's our wiggle room? Because a lot of parents don't even are not on the same page around this stuff, and they don't realize they're not on the same page until their kid is, a toddler or even older, and they want to make some food changes or something's happened, and then it's chaos.
I think people never expect their kid is going to be a picky eater. Almost never. Maybe some do, but I think health minded, like health conscious parents,
Yeah, I got this.
right. It's I don't need a manual. Like we eat healthy food. It's what's on the table. Right. And so it can be completely unexpected when your child starts going down this picky eating road.
Or eating behavior. Let's expand it to be like strange eating behavior that you didn't expect. Yeah.
Yeah, and eating behavior that makes you nervous that your kid's not getting the nutrition they need. Um, Eating behavior that's inconvenience or involves louder behaviors that are not fun, sometimes embarrassing, but hugely it's just worrying. Like if you're here listening and watching, you get health at some level that this is important. And so it is like our job is to make healthy kids, and if they're not eating the healthy food, it can be really terrifying, and then that disrupts our own sleep, nervous system, health, microbiome because we're so worried about our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's get into some of the roots and resolutions and some of the things that you have seen. It's different for every kid. I mean, you've seen one kid, you've not seen them all. You know what I mean? Like every kid is different, but I think one of the things you do well is look for patterns and you see patterns. I mean, we just talked about one of the patterns, which is inflammation, the nervous system, and microbiome, which can feel like a lot of things. But you mentioned, even one strategy is like getting out in nature. You're going to affect all three of those things all at once. And so we need to be, we need to look for those things that give us big bang for our buck in terms of our energy, right? So let's look at some of the underlying, like from a physiological perspective, what do you see going on that's really shifting eating behavior in a troubling way? And then we'll get into some of the things people can try.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the very deepest roots, and there are some really clear categories, and we're going to hit on a bunch of things, a handful of things that people can try like right now. But really, the deepest roots are everyone wants to feel good and have energy, and we want to be calm. So we want to have calm and energy and just feel good. And so there are a couple of big contributors here. One is your nervous system, like you've already mentioned. How do we calm that down when we're wound up? We're wound up all the time unless we're intentional about that, especially our kids. And if we're wound up about what our kids are eating, then they're getting some more of that wind up in that funny loop, right? Not that we're doing anything bad, but it's great to just be cognizant that they're just doing their best, right? We're just doing our best. Then there's this other category in our gut, all of these microbes. It's like having a big farm and when the cows are hungry, they're mooing for the cow food. When the chickens are hungry for their chicken food, they're going to cluck and cluck and cluck and cluck. Every time you walk out the door, they're going to be all over you, right? And so we've got these microbes inside, and if you've been feeding a population of microbes that loves sugar, that population is going to expand. And so when they get hungry, they're going to be really loud and annoying until you feed them. And so that's a super simplified version, but we've got stress needing to calm down, and we've got all these microbes that are demanding their favorite food. So it's really hard. It is hard. It's easy to get into this spiral.
It's like you've got like society working against you, and then you've got biology working against you. And yeah, and then you're sitting there as the parent saying, "Why won't you just eat it?" And the kid's like, "I don't know. I just won't." Right?
Right, exactly. And it's truly not their fault either. Truly not their fault.
They truly don't know. Like they truly don't know.
And they really are repulsed by it, or maybe it's actually more stressful to eat the nutritious food. And it's like, it's hard to get that, but it really truly is. And here's
Well, let's go there first. Can we go into that? That's huge. Let's go into that.
Yeah, so here's one example. I recently did a huge summit on constipation. Like people were like, "Wow, you're really doing that?" Um, but the truth is, working with all these families with picky eating, it turned out constipation was a major trigger for picky eating. And when I started noticing this pattern, I was like, "Oh, of course. There's no room for food. There's no room for food." And I actually experienced this myself when I came back. I had been traveling in Africa. Someone had this great idea to take anti-diarrheal medication the entire time you're traveling to prevent travelers' diarrhea. So basically, I had like 3 weeks of cement. Right? I'd never experienced it before. And if I had a bite, just a bite of food, I would literally go into shock. My pulse would get thready, I would get cold and clammy and sweaty, and I would feel that panicky shock feeling until I managed that. And if you have so some people listening might have experienced this where their child was like, "Oh, I have a pain in my chest. Like this hurts." And they eventually went and got a chest x-ray and discovered, "Oh my gosh, they're constipated like right up to their ribs." So, when you have a child who sometimes they eat the healthy food and sometimes they don't, kind of track what's happening with their bowel movements. Track what's happening with their moods. Usually, in this situation, you'll have a kid who will eat anything, and then they'll start getting cranky. They'll eat less. They'll eat things that are sugary and sweet and processed because that gives them like the most up for their bite, right? Everyone wants to feel good. They want to eat the food. It feels good. It's calming, but there's no room. So they're not gonna go for the broccoli, they're gonna go for the cookie, and that makes sense. As the constipation kind of lingers, they're gonna eat less and less, and they're gonna get more cranky and clingy, sad, maybe more anxiety because they've got this big painful event brewing. And that's super simplified. So that's one way you can kind of track, oh, what's going on. And there are lots of really, really helpful, natural, like non-toxic, non-addictive ways to manage the constipation until you unearth the trigger. So it's not like we're just gonna like stop everything right now. Like you have to kind of get curious and like explore and give yourself time to build new habits, to shift this gently because none of this shifts overnight.
Yeah, and I think that's a really core message that I wanna get across to people is real whole food is essential for the growing body, right? Our kids absolutely need it, and sometimes we slip into this like, well, they just won't eat it. I just won't buy it kind of thing. And then at some point you're like, wait a second, my kid's only eating a handful of things. And I want to encourage people to get curious about that because it is a core nourishment need. It is something our body that they need. It is something they need to be healthy and resilient as they grow physically and mentally and emotionally. And one of the things that we have to do on our big long list of things to do as a parent is teach our kids how to take care of themselves. So this is really something to get curious about and it's very worth your time and your energy to get curious about it. And I think this little kind of snippet that we just talked about like maybe they're constipated or maybe something else is off in digestion, but what you said is really, really important that what they're experiencing is real. They are experiencing something. If they are saying no to food or they're overeating or undereating or being selective, behavior always comes from somewhere. It's not just them trying to throw you in a tailspin, although that can be part of it because relationship can be a part of it, but maybe something's going on. And so I think the best thing you can do is get curious, pull out your journal, start tracking things and constipation and what's going on in their tummy is something worth considering.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love what you say about whole foods. Like they're essential. It's like if your child eats nothing but the sugary stuff, it's like building a sandcastle. You're not going to get, the sugar, the processed food, and it's not going to hold up. And it shows up differently in every human being. And you can consider adults also like, what are the issues they're having. And so this links in to some other issues that kids often have. Like maybe they're having trouble swallowing. They don't seem to have like the mouth power or the ability to manipulate food and swallow. If their mitochondria are not healthy, then they're not going to have the cellular power to use those muscles properly. They're going to have, a lot of kids go through like have that kind of like slumpy and drooly kind of thing. My son did. And that, that's a lack of muscle tone in their intestines. A lack of muscle tone in different places is sometimes the cause of that. I'm not going to say blanket.
I see that too, and it's a vicious cycle too because our mitochondria need to be fed. So if you need more nutrients than the average person when you have sluggish mitochondria, and we're not talking about mitochondria disease. We're just talking about sort of tired and undernourished and stressed mitochondria. And now we know that there's such a thing as a cell danger response, which we won't get too deeply into, but we know that mitochondria have actually a dual role. One is to create energy and the other is to assess for threat. And so, back to the nervous system, if your child feels like they're under threat for whatever reason, and we can talk about that, but and their mitochondria are going into cell danger response, then they're not creating the energy that they need, and that could show up as picky eating. That's a little bit more of a complicated story around it, but I think it speaks to the point of something's going on.
Oh, yeah. You need to chew on crunchy whole foods to build the palate so that you have a broad enough mouth so that you don't need the braces, so you can breathe at night. You need all these things. You need the fiber to feed your gut bugs that are supporting your ability to repel, to digest your food, to repel infectious organisms. I mean, it's all connected. We really, really are made of the quality of food that we have, and this can be super motivating to your kids. When you give them options, when you start giving them like positive experiences that they can feel that they're feeling better, they're having more energy, they're waking up happier, they don't have a major embarrassing behavior crash at the party, whatever it is that's motivating to them. Cheer them on, like give them other let them know you're going to run faster, you're going to be focusing better at school, like this is amazing, you have this option.
Well, positive reinforcement, I mean, is a wonderful strategy of like, "I'm so proud of you. I know you didn't like this yesterday and you liked it today, and I'm so proud of you for trying." Those things go a long way.
Yeah, and choice, and giving them choices, hopefully between, like, a good thing and, maybe a little better thing, like, we can craft our choices, um, and we need to start where everyone is. Can I loop back to another thing that can be related to the constipation and the picky eating? There are a couple kinds of foods, we all know about these foods, that are really, really, addictive. Foods that have opioid-like compounds in them. So the gluten, the dairy, they have those soothing, comforting, like, addictive kind of qualities to them, like heroin. Um, and they also, like opiate drugs, slow and stop the digestive system. So, got a few things going on here with those foods. Of course, like, oh my gosh, who doesn't love these foods? Um, so, if this is what your kid's eating, you're going to need to come up with some really great trades to make it super fun so that they're like, "Whoa, what's going on?" One of my favorite things to do is to have my clients serve like, banana splits for breakfast. Get like, basically serve dessert for breakfast. You can do this and get protein and some other things in, but I'm not worried about sugar when we start addressing the picky eating. That's for later. We want to figure out what's triggering some of these other behaviors first.
What do you put in your banana split?
Non-dairy ice cream, gluten-free, dairy-free cookies. Okay, so, like, I'm big on like, we don't eat like this all the time, of course, but there are substitutes for this so that eventually you can feel like you're serving breakfast or serving dessert for breakfast, but it's actually all really good healthy stuff with no sugar in it. So that's kind of like that's the end goal, so that all your food is fun and awesome and your kid mostly likes to eat most of it. But in the meantime, you've got to figure out ways to explore so you can maybe do an elimination with your child and then reintroduce some things so your kid actually experiences the difference. They have the power of experience and choice, and they can say to you, "Hey, I know that this food is a problem for me, but I really want to eat it with all the kids. So will you help me after?" How amazing to have that happen instead of like the food issue, the fight. And I'm mentioning this because this ties into the picky eating because these are these habits that we get. Like we just get down these roads so quickly and easily. Another thing about dairy that's really interesting is if you go back in the literature, the more recent literature can be kind of confusing because, different citizens groups for dairy and different industrial groups are putting out a lot of research also to support, their interests. But if you go back a little further, you'll find research that shows that eating dairy can diminish your zinc stores. This is really interesting because there is a lot of clear evidence that being deficient in zinc, which most Americans are, probably most people in the world, are deficient in zinc unless they're supplementing. When we're low in zinc, we end up with picky eating is a big part of this. A lot of like sensory processing disorder symptoms. Can't stand loud noises. Can't stand bright lights. The seams and the tags are bothering your child, bothering you. Textures, tastes, smells of food are repulsive to your child. This is not their fault. If they're low in zinc, it really is repulsive to them. It's really hard. It's a very hard situation. So there are different things you can do about this. You could try a zinc tally test where if you get this liquid, if it tastes bad, you have enough zinc. If someone doesn't taste it, it means they don't have enough zinc. They're zinc deficient. So that's an interesting way to try it out. You can do hair mineral analysis, or you can just explore, get your doctor's blessing, do your own research, and try this out.
That's something I'm seeing a lot since I've been looking into it. Zinc is involved in everything. I mean, it's involved in the immune system. It's involved in digestion. All the digestive enzymes require zinc. Digesting gluten requires zinc. Detoxification. It's calming. The nervous system requires zinc. We need it to create our neurotransmitters. It really does a lot of things, and I don't want people to like panic and go out. I think when you're suspecting a nutrient deficiency as a parent, I think the first thing to do is take a look at their diet. Just do a quick Google of zinc sources, food sources, and just see like, are they eating any? Are they getting any zinc? Because again, we're in a vicious cycle because they're being picky. They just want noodles and whatever, right? Um, so are there nutrients coming in? And if not, then again, getting curious and doing a little bit of digging around that too. But I do see that the palate starts to open up and partly what I see when I start kids on zinc is there's two things, right? There's the appetite and the taste sensations and all of that. But then there's the learned behavior around food. And they know that, well, I had that before and I didn't like it, so I'm not going to like it again. So even if you've changed the palate a little bit because you've changed their nutrient status, they might still have that memory. They sure do have that memory of like, oh, I ate that and it made me feel terrible. I'm never going to do that again. So there's a little bit of creative parenting around like, well, let's gently try this again and see if you can have that experience. Like you said, like it's important for them to have a felt experience of like, oh, okay, that's okay now.
They need to own it. They really need to own it. Kids don't own a whole lot these days. It's so empowering to give them ownership of their food.
Hey parents, this episode of the Feeding Families podcast is being brought to you by the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. Are you aspiring to start a career in holistic nutrition? Looking to achieve optimal health and well-being and help others do the same? CSNN's Natural Nutrition Diploma program can help you gain a well-rounded understanding of scientific, holistic, and practical applications of natural nutrition. Earn your diploma, professional designation, and title, and join the over 11,000 graduates worldwide. The comprehensive science-based curriculum provides a strong foundation for a career in the holistic nutrition industry. Learn how to create individualized health support programs for clients. With part-time and full-time schedules and flexible learning formats, including live online classes, there's something for everyone looking to improve their overall health and well-being with holistic nutrition. There are multiple CSNN branches across Canada, plus online distance education options. Learn more at csnn.ca/holistic-family or follow the links in the show notes. Sometimes I think parents fall into this like Well, they're just being manipulative. They're just I can't cave to this because then they're just getting what they want. And I want to reframe that a little bit because what you're hearing us both say is your child's having an experience. Something is happening there. And your job is to figure it out, right? Or get help to figure it out. I think one of the pitfalls we run into as parents is invalidating their experience and just kind of brushing it off and saying, "Oh, come on, it's fine. Just eat, just do it. Like it's fine. Everybody else is doing it. Like what's the big deal?" Right? And that's a very slippery slope because kids want to be seen. Like in order for a child to feel safe, in order for their nervous system to really develop the way we want it to develop, they need to feel seen and heard and safe. Even if you don't understand them, they need to think that you understand them. Right? Would you agree?
Yeah, and asking them questions about their experience goes so far because even if you don't agree or really get their answers, like you've just asked for them. You're showing them you value their experience. And that is calming because it's terrifying to be like, dragged along on a wild ride and, like, I don't like this. I don't know what's happening. I'm tired. I'm wound up. I can't control my behavior. I hate broccoli. I don't want broccoli. Disempowerment is unsafe. So I love that you mentioned the safety. And I mean, we all go through this, and there are times when, with kids, you're like, well, I love you, and you really don't have a choice. So they also need to feel physically comfortable. And when we can't digest our food, then it's uncomfortable. And I think kids oftentimes they avoid foods because they're uncomfortable internally, but they can't quite articulate it. Like they can't quite connect it. I mean, adults don't connect it either. But if you're avoiding, like I think a lot of kids who are very young, who decide they're vegetarian when they're very young, oftentimes they just can't digest meat, and people won't bother them. Zinc, enzymes. I mean, huge. I mean, zinc is so important right from the top, your stomach acid and enzymes.
Stomach acid, and the stomach acid is where protein starts to digest, and so if you're eating a very high protein food and you don't have good stomach acid because you're low in zinc, it's one possible explanation. But what you just said is important, is that one way that kids don't feel safe is not being able to answer the question. So when you sit your kid down and you're like, "Why won't you eat the broccoli?" And they have no idea actually. They can't articulate, "Well, when I eat it, it sits in my stomach funny and it makes me get have gas and blah, blah, blah." They don't know. And that for some kids, especially very sensitive kids, that will they'll throw up their defenses and they will get angry or they will withdraw or whatever their nervous system feels like it needs to do, but they're not going to answer the question because they really have no idea, and they're not going to eat the food because it's not going to help. So I would caution people around some of those slippery slopes that we get into is, why won't you just do it? And everyone else is doing it's fine, like brushing off their actual experience. It's not actually fine for them.
Kids do not want their parents to disapprove. Like they don't want to disappoint their parents and that is a deeply ingrained. That's just a survival mechanism because these are the people that make it possible for you to survive, right? And so it's a deep, deep, deep biological. Like you want your parents to think you're doing the right thing.
You need your parents to. You need your parents to see you and understand you and know that you're doing the right things. They need to know that you are there for them.
Right. And so when you can't answer the question or answer it in the right way, then that's going to increase the stress, which decreases the power of your stomach acid and enzymes, which, decreases the digestion. And with the vegetarianism, when you say, oh, I love animals, all done. People can respect that. That's an acceptable answer. I just don't want to eat the meat. Not acceptable. So again, it's all about the curiosity. Like if your kids maybe has trouble digesting their food, there are a few things you can try. Like let's try them out, let's really get into like the calming, all the calming steps that you and I know and love, at dinner time, before dinner. Maybe try out some of these other techniques, and check in with your child. Like really engage them. This is a project that you and I are going to do together, and I'm so curious because I don't know what's going on in your body. I don't know what it feels like.
That's a phrase you can pull out anytime, anywhere. Like I don't know the answer to this, but let's get curious together. Let's do this together. And it's a great one to pull out if your child says they love animals and they want to be vegetarian. And I actually see that quite a lot because the kids that I work with are very, very sensitive kiddos. They're super feelers, they're very intuitive. And so often they get to a point where they're just like, this doesn't seem right to eat another animal. And then the response, interesting. Okay, well let's do this together. Because the problem is if they just think about not eating animals, well, how are they going to get their nutritional needs met? Which they may be able to, but they need to give some conscious consideration to it. And if you're the one who is preparing the food for the family, then you might need to learn a thing or two. And if they're the one who is asking for it, then they need to help you. If this is a project, right? It does not need to be all on your shoulders.
So beautiful. Yeah, I love that it's not all on your shoulders. Um, I love, like, getting kids cooking and choosing and going to the grocery store, like, young, so that they are engaged and they feel again, it's like giving them this, the power within, their world, but then also as you move on, it's like my kid, he'll cook a whole dinner for me, like great dinners. He fries his own eggs in the morning. He'll ask me, "Hey, how do you want your eggs?" It's like it's great, once,
And how old is he now?
he's 11 and a half. Yeah, I learned, a long time ago, Katie Wells, Wellness Mama, actually, she told me, "Oh, my 5-year-old does the laundry," and I was like, "Oh," and I went home and was like, "Hey, let me teach you how to do the laundry." Like, "Oh, why didn't I think of this?" And he loves it.
This is on this could be another picky eating strategy, right? Because what a child puts in their mouth is it's a lot of power. It's their body, it's their mouth. They just have to say no and close it, and there's really nothing you can do. So it's a strong leverage point for a kid who wants some control and doesn't feel like they have any control. And so, maybe just reorienting and say like you can have control over here. You can have control over here. And I mean, it's maybe a stretch to say doing your own laundry is having control, but it could be if you frame it right. Be like, you can have control over.
Absolutely. For kids who like that independence, gosh, a lot of them respond so beautifully. Like they're proud. They're proud to have their jobs and participate and contribute.
And it might take time. I mean, it might take time, right? So it's not like, oh, my kid did my laundry. Now they're sitting down and they're going to eat because yesterday they were picky. It's not going to happen like that. But we're talking back to the very beginning about creating your family culture. We all have our roles. We all have our jobs. One of our jobs is to nourish our bodies. We put food in our mouths to nourish our body, and it's a fact. It's fact, right? And just sort of stepping into your authority as parents too, and to sort of structure that is a learning curve.
Yeah. We've been talking for a while already. I'm not sure what your time frame is, but I did want to just mention like sugar. Just that can just being addicted to sugar is an addiction sounds like such a bad word, but it's not. I mean, we're all addicted to things that make us feel better. The fastest way to feel better, right? It changes the dopamine in our brain. It changes how many dopamine receptors we have in our brain. I mean, there are deep things going on here when kids want nothing but sugar, when adults want nothing but sugar. I mean, I think we all know what it feels like to be kind of helpless if there's a food or a thing that will make us feel better in the short term, if it's around, like, how really? How can I mean, so there's a whole process of recognizing that, and again, exploring it with your kids, noticing, like, having them start to tell you, like, what they're feeling, what they wanna do, what they wanna eat, and just kind of noticing, "Oh, well, if you wanna feel better, like, how about this thing? If you wanna taste something sweet, how about this thing?" Like the Zevia sodas taste sweet, but they don't have the sugar. "Oh, you're feeling kind of, like, anxious. Let's go run around the block or, like, play with the dog." Like, let's find out more. Let's see how many different ways we can fill that real important need that you're having without doing something that's gonna make you, like, maybe get sick tomorrow or just, like, feel gross or behave like a crazy wild animal or, whatever it is. Like, again, it's all about giving your child more power.
Mhm, mhm. That really does give them a sense of calm, power within boundaries, like age appropriate control, right? Within the structure that you've set, within the culture that you've set. So we've talked about a lot of different potential contributors. I think, again, I think our biggest message here is that behavior always comes from somewhere. Get curious, and and just you can get curious by starting to look for patterns. We talked a little bit about the gut microbiome and that perhaps they're constipated or they're not digesting their food well. So I always like, ask questions about like, how does this make you, like, what's going on in your tummy when you eat this? And they might say, I don't know, because they might actually not know. But sometimes they actually do know. It feels a little heavy. It feels like this gives me tummy ache. Um, and watch, because sometimes they will say that they're pooping and they're actually not, right? So just introduce them to the Bristol stool chart. You could get a copy of it and be like, "Hey, can you just, like, give me a number every day?" This is great for older kids who don't wanna talk about their poop. And just get curious about that. And even for your older kids, just saying, "Hey, I've been noticing that you're not nourishing your body the way it needs to be nourished." And here's the thing too, more about what a body needs than they do, right? They have not learned this unless you've taught it to them. So you can feel confident even if you don't know all of the specifics in saying something like that. Like, I've just been noticing that you're not nourishing your body, you're not giving it what it needs. Can we just kind of dig into that a little bit? And they might say no. And then it's not the time to have that conversation, because if they say no, they're not gonna hear anything after that,
No, and I'm
right?
leaving to go get some Takis.
Yeah, exactly. And so, try it again another time when they're feeling safe and connected to you. So we've talked about the microbiome. What else did we talk about? Some nutrient deficiencies, like zinc, calm, creating a calm atmosphere around your table. Those can be important. Any other, like, top tips, things that you've seen?
Yeah, getting curious and, really having compassion. Like, they are really doing their best. And if you have these things in your environment and that's what tastes best or feels best, why wouldn't they want that? It's right there.
Modeling, right? What's your relationship with food? What are your preferences? What about dad or, parenting partner?
And it's not bad. None of it is bad. It's just interesting because if you're trying to get from here to here, you need to figure out what path are you going to build through your family terrain, through your life, you know?
And they are full of surprises, our kiddos. They are full of surprises. I have a kid who he would not touch pasta sauce. Like, he would eat the plain noodles. Anytime I would have, like, a spaghetti dinner or whatever, he would, and all the good stuff is in the sauce, right? I'm putting organ meats in there, and I'm putting ground up veggies in there, and it's like all the good stuff is there. And he's like, "No, I just want the noodles." For years. And then all of a sudden, guess what happened? I gave it to him one day and he ate it. And I'm sitting there like going, "Don't make a fuss. Don't make a fuss. Don't make a fuss." But I was floored. So it is one of those things, like, you just have to kind of keep at it and just like, this is how we nourish our bodies. This is what we do. It's your mouth. So I can't pin you down and force it in, but I really wish you would eat this because it's delicious and your body wants it.
I had another thought right now. We had a little conversation about different stages of parenting and like the concept of the idea of possibly being addicted to stress. Which is very, very real because when you're stressed, you release these like amped up neurotransmitters and biochemicals that keep you going. And it's very addictive, very addictive. But it's our world. And so usually people don't even think about it. But our kids can get into that too. If they're low energy, or if they just like the spike of energy, getting into a little tiff with a parent at the dinner table, it's kind of irresistible. I mean, it's like the big red button. We all have our big red buttons that we can't help but push if it's there, right? It's just, I mean, again, they're doing their best. Like if there's a big red button in front of me, well, there are sometimes, and sometimes I push them because it's fun, right? So if you are able to remove your big red button and not make a fuss, not ask them again, it might work out really well for you and ripple out to your kid in a really beautiful way like, my kid just ate all the sauce.
It's another thing to get curious. I do see that a lot. I see some of the kids who like to just poke and then withdraw. So often they'll do it with siblings or they'll do it with parents, right? It'd be like just sort of like agitate and then watch chaos unfold. And why not? It's another pattern. And then it'll be an interesting conversation. It'll be like, "Oh, it's really interesting. I've noticed that every time we sit down to the table, you poke your brother and we're in this cycle. Huh. Interesting. Just notice. You don't have to tell them to stop. You just have to notice. They need to know that you noticed. Oh, it's such a journey, isn't it? Well, listen, I mean, we thank you for coming and talking about this. I think we could talk about it for a long time. And I hope that people listening kind of got a few tips to take away. There is so much when it comes to eating behavior, and it's our kids are little bundles of interesting chaos. We could call it. And as we learn about them, it becomes organized chaos, and you're like, oh, you do this when you want that, and interesting, this is going on in your body and it makes you do these things. And that is a wonderful, wonderful, exciting, fun thing to do. And I really hope that every parent listening gets to that point of like, I get my kid. I want you to get your kid. So I hope this helps a little bit with that. Any final words? Where can people learn from you? And what do you want them to remember?
Oh, yeah, remember, like, you're doing your best, they're doing their best, like, take a big breath and see what you can find in it that's just fun, interesting. You're doing great. If you're watching this, listening, you're doing amazing. Everybody's doing amazing, really, truly.
That's it. If you stuck with us, you're doing great. Where can people find you? Where can people find you? We'll put it in the show notes.
Thank you. On Instagram at Healthy Gut Happy Child, at online, coachelissa.com, and a few other places, but those are good for now.
Those are good places. And we'll put those in the show notes as well.
Thanks for asking, and thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe. And if you feel called to, share it with another family who needs to hear it. There are more tools from me at jesssherman.com/learn and jesssherman.com/membership, alongside all the great resources you'll find at EcoParent. Things are changing for kids, and the more we come together in conversation as parents, the more we can find ease and joy as we raise the next generation together. I look forward to seeing you back here next time. Until then, keep at it. You have the most important job in the world.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If so, please consider leaving a review and subscribing to the podcast. If you think this podcast is great, our host, Jess Sherman, has condensed everything you need to know to nourish your family into a truly fantastic 7-hour video course. You can learn more at ecoparent.ca/learn. It will change the way you think about feeding your family. You might also be interested in our Kids Wellness course, taught by Dr. Leslie Solomonia. As a thank you for listening, I'd like to offer you a 15% discount on any one of our online courses or any subscription to EcoParent magazine. Just head on over to ecoparent.ca, hit the Eco Shop button in the navigation bar, and use code FEEDING15 at checkout. All caps, no spaces, that's FEEDING15. Till next time.